Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories. I am the American Hauntstorian, Alan Searcy. Glad you guys are here today. Christmas, man, it's right around the corner. Really just kind of snuck up on us. Seemed like just the other day it was St. Patrick's Day and Easter. And now here we are, Christmas and New Year's, and boom, right 2026. But hey, Christmas is right around the corner. Some big news. Two of my new books, Hexed and Sausage King, make great stocking stuffers. It fit perfectly in a stocking. You wrap them, put them under a tree. They're both $9.99 now until Christmas. So, hey, make somebody really happy. Grab The Sausage King, my murder mystery in Chicago, or Hex, my creepy voodoo story from Knoxville, 1940s. Grab those for Christmas and give them out as gifts. So, I've been asking you guys, send some questions into my Instagram, Facebook, The Southern Ghost Stories Facebook, Southern Ghost Stories Instagram. You can follow me on there. So, I've been getting questions. I got a bunch of those, but I really wanted to get into one. Someone asked me, what is the most haunted location in Tennessee? So you guys know I was born and raised outside of Nashville, been here all my life, and there's so much stuff, and it's kind of, man, that's a really hard question. Murfreesboro, I've got a book about Murfreesboro Murfreesboro, it had 3 Civil War battles. It's the only city in the country that can really claim that. Nashville, I have 2 books on Gallatin, Franklin, man, the Civil War. So I was trying to think, after I read this question, what is the most haunted place in Tennessee? So I kind of bounced around. I was thinking the Reed House in Chattanooga, because if you guys know the story there, Annalisa, the lady who was murdered in 311, she's so active they closed the room. But the more I thought about it, so, like in Louisville, everybody goes to, or in Kentucky, Waverly Hill, that's the place you go there. Like every state has their own thing. So when you think Tennessee, what do you think? So have you guys been to Red Bowling Springs, the Thomas House? I think I've talked about it in previous episodes. But to me, I think the Thomas House probably is the most, most haunted is really subjective. But the most active, the Thomas House is very active. I have friends, I've had family go on ghost hunts. I've been in the house a couple times. I never really had an experience, but I know a lot of people who have. You can rent the rooms. I know one of the rooms is like a crib where you can leave stuffed animals, and in the morning they'll find those stuffed animals on the floor. I know people have seen like full-blown apparitions walking down the hall. I know the lady who owned the place, she saw a man riding a horse through the house one day and then dissipated right in front of her eyes. All kinds of weird stories about the Thomas House. And the thing is, there's a spring that runs underneath it. I'm not sure if you guys know, they say that running water draws spirits. I'm not sure the energy, how it all works, but they say that running water, it attracts the spirits. And I guess that's why they're there. I don't really know. I know there was someone was shot and killed behind the house. I think there was a cave behind the house that was used as a speakeasy during Prohibition. One of my favorite stories, there was a guy who he wrestled for the WWF long before Hulk Hogan got there. You guys know I'm a big wrestling fan. But he came to Tennessee and he bought the hotel, the Thomas House it was called. It escapes me now, but he bought the hotel, and he had this bear he traveled around the South with. He would wrestle this bear at wrestling shows. So, like I'm sure they'd come to town, they put up advertisements in the paper, so-and-so versus the bear. Well, he kept the bear in the house because he had to work with it and train it. And they say that in part of, I think, the basement, you can find these little things in the floor where the guy kept the bear chained in the house. So, not really a ghost story, but it's probably my favorite story from just that weird haunted place. So, I told you guys, it's Christmas time, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. I've been talking about Christmas stories and cryptids and Han's Trap and Krampus, all kinds of just weird, eerie Christmas legends around the world. Well, I was thinking maybe just try to keep it close to home today and talk about like some Christmas true crime, some weird stuff happening here. So it takes about 2 hours at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to cremate a human body. Even then, the bones, they still remain. The teeth, they don't burn up. We know this because science tells us so. We know this because fire, it destroys, but it also leaves evidence. But on Christmas morning in 1945, in the smoking ruins of a West Virginia home, science took the day off, took Christmas off. 5 children were trapped on the second floor of a burning house. The house collapsed in 45 minutes, and when the sun came up, there was nothing. No skulls, no bones, no teeth. Did the fire eat them whole, or was there never any fire at all? So, I'm Alan Searcy, the American historian, and this is the story of the Sodder Children. So let's set the scene. It's December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. World War II is over. The soldiers are coming home. For the first time in years, America is just kind of exhaling. Hey, all right, the holidays are here. Let's celebrate. Well, in the Sodder household, things were chaotic, but they were happy. George and Jenny Sodder, they were Italian immigrants who had done well for themselves. George, he owned a trucking company. They had 10 children, 9 of whom were home for the holidays. You know, it was a joyous occasion for them. But there is an undercurrent of tension in the house that I guess we got to address before the fire starts. George Sodder, he was a very outspoken man. He had a temper. He was fiercely anti-Mussolini, who was the Italian dictator. Well, in an Italian-American community in the 1940s, speaking out about Mussolini, that made some enemies. So I got a flashback here. A few months earlier, a stranger came to the door selling insurance. He knocked on the door. He talked to George, gave him his pitch. Well, George didn't want to buy an insurance policy. So this insurance salesman, he became irate. He started pointing his finger at George at the house and says, "Your house is going to go up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to be paid for the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini." So this guy, what was he doing? Was he an insurance salesman? Was he just somebody who was ready just to pop off on George for the comments he made? I don't really know. Well, 12:30 a.m., it's Christmas morning. The house is asleep. Everybody's zonked out. Santa Claus has come, I suppose. The phone rings. Well, Jenny Sodder, she woke up. She goes downstairs. She answers it. On the other end, there's a woman, and she doesn't recognize the voice. The woman asks for a name that Jenny doesn't recognize. In the background, Jenny hears a clinking of glasses and laughter. It's like it's a party, a Christmas party. Then the woman on the phone laughs, like a weird, sharp, eerie laugh. Jenny told her, "You have the wrong number," and she hung up on her. Well, she noticed 2 things. First, the lights downstairs are still on. Second, the curtains, which the kids usually close, they were wide open, like someone wanted to see inside. Someone could see inside. She locked the door, and she went back upstairs, and she went to bed. Well, 1 o'clock, she barely just got back to sleep. She woke up again. She hears a loud bang on the roof, and then a weird rolling noise. It's like a heavy golf ball is rolling down the shingles. She listens. It stops. She assumes it's nothing. She rolls back over. She goes back to sleep. It's the last time she ever slept in that house. 1:30, half an hour later, smoking is pouring into the bedroom. The fire, it wasn't coming from the kitchen or the Christmas tree. It's coming from the office, the fuse box. George and Jenny, they react on instinct. They grab the youngest child, Sylvia, and they get her outside. The older boys, John, George Jr., they escape from the attic where they had their room. They stand in the yard screaming for the other 5 children, Maurice, Martha, Louie, Jenny, and Betty. And those kids were all trapped on the second floor. In the staircase, it's like a wall of flame. They're stuck. So this is where the story shifts from a tragedy to a mystery. Because George Sodder, he was a man of action. He has a plan. He has the tools to save them. But on this night, Christmas night, nothing works. The ladder. George, he keeps a heavy extension ladder that he leaned against the side of the house for this exact reason. Fire was kind of a thing in the early 20th century. A lot of houses are made from wood, and I guess he just kind of had in the back of his mind, hey, this could happen to me. So this ladder, he runs and he grabs and smashes the attic window and tries to get up there. And then number two, the trucks. George, he ran a trucking fleet. He planned to drive one of his coal trucks right up to the wall, climb up on the cab, and reach the window. So his ladder's gone. Well, now the first truck, it wouldn't crank. It wouldn't start. Went to the second truck. It wouldn't start. These trucks worked perfectly the day before. So obviously somebody has messed with them. Well, there's a third thing that kind of goes wrong. The water. The rain barrel is frozen solid. The family stands in the snow barefoot watching their home collapse. It took only 45 minutes. By 2:30, the Sodder home, it was a pile of ash in the basement. Now they assumed their 5 children were dead inside. Well, Christmas morning breaks, the sun comes up, smoke clears. The coroner and the fire chief, F.J. Morris, they arrived to recover the bodies. Well, the parents, you can only imagine, they're just bracing themselves for the horror of seeing the charred remains of their 5 children, but they didn't get out. But the fire chief, Mr. Morris, he sifted through the ash, he kicked through the rubble, and you know what he found? Nothing. No bones, no skulls. So let's look at the science here. To cremate a body, I mentioned earlier, completely cremate it, to turn bone into dust, you need sustained temperatures over 2,000 degrees for 2 hours. The Sodder house, it was wood and plaster. It burned for 45 minutes. Even if the wind was blowing, it wasn't hot enough. Well, George Sodder, this ate away at him. He couldn't let it go. He lost 5 children. So later, he actually used animal carcasses to test this theory. He burned them in a pile of wood. Every single time, the charred bones remain. So if the bones weren't in the basement, where were the children? Well, the official ruling by the fire department, by Mr. Morris, the fire chief, he claimed the fire was due to faulty wiring. But remember the phone call I mentioned? The open curtains? His long extension ladder that was missing the night of the fire? A telephone repairman checked the phone lines later. The phone line hadn't been burned through by the fire. It had been cut cleanly with pliers at the top of the pole. Someone climbed the pole before the fire started. And the faulty wiring? The family recalled seeing the Christmas lights still on when the fire was raging. If the short circuit started the fire, the power would have cut out instantly, right? Well, it's so weird. But then came the sightings. A woman at a tourist stop 50 miles west of their home claimed she served the children breakfast the morning after the fire. Another woman at a Charleston hotel claimed she saw the children a week later. She said they were with 2 men and 2 women of quote-unquote Italian extraction. She tried to talk to the kids, but the men became hostile, and he wouldn't let her get close to them. So was this the Mafia, the Italian Mafia, making good on the threat to George? Did his remarks about Mussolini come back to bite him? Did they steal the children to raise them in Italy and just to erase their identity? No one really knows. So for 20 years, George and Jenny waited. They erected a billboard on Route 19 with photos of the 5 children. It became a landmark of grief. You can actually Google it. There are photos online. It's awful. Well, in 1968, the mail arrived one day. And in it, it was an envelope postmarked from Kentucky. No return address. Inside was a grainy black and white photo of a man. He looked to be in his mid-20s. He had dark curly hair and a large nose. To Jenny Sodder, the resemblance, it was undeniable. It looked exactly like her son Louis if he had grown up to become a man. On the back of the photo, in messy handwriting, it read, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Illy boys, A90132. Well, as you expect, this freaked the Sodders out. The family, they hired a private investigator. He went to Kentucky to search for the man in the photo. Well, the investigator took their money, went to Kentucky, never heard from him again. So, unfortunately, George Sodder, he died a year later, 1969, never really knowing the truth. Was his son still alive? So he died, a very, very sad man. Well, Jeannie Sodder, she wore black every day for the rest of her life. She tended a garden she planted over the site where the house once stood, and she died 20 years after her husband in 1989. So the billboard's gone, the house is gone, but the question remains, think about it. If they died in that fire, where were the bones? And if they lived, why did they never come home? Surely these kids knew about their parents. Yeah, Christmas is right around the corner. Be sure to lock your doors. So I found another one that really kind of just ate at me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So a photograph is usually a memory. It's a way to freeze a moment in time so you can look back and smile. Well, in December 1929, Charlie Lawson from Germantown, North Carolina, he took his wife and 7 children downtown, and he did something that, for a poor tobacco farmer on the brink of the Great Depression, it was pretty wild. He bought them all brand new clothes, suits for the boys, and silk dresses for the girls. He took them to a photographer's studio, and he arranged them, and he told them to stand still. Well, he wanted to get a family photo made. And back in 1929, it's not like, point and click. There's a lot more to it. There's, you got to stand still. They have to do some chemical stuff. So anyway, today when you see that picture, you see a handsome family. But if you look closer, you realize what you're actually looking at. You aren't looking at a Christmas card. You're looking at a death mask. Charlie wasn't capturing a memory. He was dressing his family for their coffins. So most people know the Amityville Horror, but 50 years before Amityville, the American South had its own house of horrors. And unlike Amityville, there were no demons there. There's only a father, a shotgun, and a plan. So, Christmas, 1929, North Carolina. Charlie Lawson, he's a 43-year-old tobacco farmer. To his neighbors, he's a hard worker, but off. Years earlier, he took a mattock, a digging tool, to the head of a construction accident. During a construction accident, he was hit. People said that part of his brain that knew right from wrong, it went haywire that day when he was hit. But crazy implies chaos, and Charlie didn't seem chaotic. It was calculated. The weeks leading up to Christmas, they were kind of strange. The Great Depression had just hit, money was tight, yet Charlie was spending like a king. He bought new clothes for his family. He organized the portrait. And this is the key to the story. In 1929, rural farmers, they didn't take the family portraits unless someone had died. It was kind of a luxury. Charlie was setting the stage. He wanted the newspapers to have a good picture to run on the front page, obviously. Well, Christmas morning, the ground is hard, the air is cold. 17-year-old Arthur Lawson, the oldest son, is sent off on an errand to buy ammunition. Charlie wanted to get him out of the house. Why? Maybe because Arthur was the only one big enough to fight back. With the biggest threat gone, Charlie picked up his 12-gauge shotgun. He walked out to the tobacco barn. His 2 daughters, Carrie, who was 12, and Maybelle, who was 7, they're playing near the tobacco barn. They're all wearing new winter coats. Charlie doesn't say a word. He raises his shotgun. He shot them both, but he didn't leave them there. And this is where the story shifts from a simple murder to some kind of dark ritual. Charlie dragged their bodies into the tobacco barn. He crosses their arms over their chests, peaceful, like they're sleeping. And then he finds some rocks. He gently places a large stone under each of their heads, kind of like a pillow. Why? Was it comfort, or was it a weight to keep their souls from rising? No one really knows. Well, he walks back to the house. His wife Marie's on the porch. She sees him coming. She sees the gun. Well, then she screams. He shot her at point-blank range. He stepped over her body and entered the house. Inside, the other children are hiding. James, who was 4, Raymond, who was 2, and Mary Lou, who was 4 months old. I'm going to skip over what happened, but you pretty much know. Well, and it's like in the barn, he took the children's bodies, and he performed the same ritual. He arranged the bodies, he crossed their arms, he finds rocks from the fireplace and pillows from their beds, and he propped up their heads. 7 bodies, all laid out for a funeral that hasn't happened yet. Well, the only survivor was the oldest son, Arthur, who returned home to find his entire world destroyed. Charlie Lawson slipped into the woods, but hours later, as the police and neighbors swarmed the property, they heard one final gunshot echo from the trees. Charlie had turned the gun on himself. When they found him, he had letters in his pockets to his parents, but there was no explanation, no manifesto, just a dead man in the Carolina woods. Now, usually this is where the true crime story ends. The killer's dead, the family's buried, the town goes into mourning. But in this story, the horror was just getting started because the blood wasn't even dry before the business offers started coming in. Charlie's brother, Marion Lawson, inherited his brother's property. Most people would burn the house to the ground. You couldn't live in it. The floorboards were soaked in blood. The walls were splattered. But Marion saw something else. He saw a line of cars forming down the dirt road. Within weeks of the massacre, while the graves were still fresh, Marion opened the Lawson home to the public. He didn't clean it up. In fact, he made sure not to. Admission was 25 cents. Adjusted for inflation, for 2025, that's roughly $5 a head. And people paid it. They came by the thousands. They walked through the front door. They gawked at the bloodstains on the floor, which Marion had purposely not cleaned up. They stared at the splatter all over the walls. But the centerpiece of this grotesque tour was in the kitchen. On Christmas morning before she died, Marie Lawson had baked a raisin cake. It was sitting on the table, ready for Christmas dinner. Marion left it there. He put a glass bell jar over the cake to protect it, and for months, tourists would follow in the kitchen, stare at the dried blood on the floor, and then look at the Christmas cake that the dead woman had baked. Some visitors even picked up the raisins as souvenirs before they finally put the glass jar on top of it. It was like a carnival. People took splinters from the walls. They stripped leaves from the trees outside. Marion Lawson made a fortune on his brother's madness. Eventually, the novelty wore off. The house was torn down. The wood was repurposed and scattered into other structures in the county, meaning people there in Germantown, North Carolina, they might be living at pieces of the Lawson murder house in their walls and not even know it. The raisin cake was allegedly kept there for years, and naturally it molded and became like a monument to a Christmas that never happened. So we talk a lot about monsters and true crime, but Charlie Lawson, he was a monster. He wiped out his bloodline that afternoon. Oh, man. Yeah, that's pretty heavy, pretty wild. So anyway, now that I've completely put a wet blanket over Christmas, hey, Monster City Madhouse, every day is Halloween. They specialize in premium Halloween and classic horror shirts with a vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing is available. Also, Hex, make sure you pick up the new book, $9.99. Makes a great stocking stuffer. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. Those 5 stars, man, those are great. Help find other people to find us. So check back next week for more ghost stories, and be sure to follow Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see you guys real soon. Merry Christmas, guys.